Shalom. Shalom. My name is Robert.
And I'm Jocelyn.
I'm Kendall. I'm Malia.
And this is?
Michaela.
What's your name?
Michaela.
Okay. And my other son is running around. But we were asked to give our testimony of coming into the truth. And I'm going to let my wife start.
Well, I remember first being introduced to the truth when my brother called me, and this was after I was in church, and I was challenged by one of the pastors, actually the whole congregation, to do an intensive study of the Bible after he had done a trip to Israel. And most of the time we focused on the New Testament, and there wasn't a lot of times where we would go back and read what I came to know as being the Torah. And so I took that to heart, and so I was reading. I'm in my car a lot, so I listened to
the Bible experience.
The Bible experience on a daily basis. And so there was one day that my brother called, and he's like, I have a question for you. Have you read Deuteronomy 28? And I was like, I had actually just listened to that. And he asked me, who does that sound like? And I was like, that sounds like, quote unquote black people. That sounds like us. And he's like, yeah, that is. And so it started me to thinking like what this actually meant for us. I was reading or listening to scriptures about these stiff-necked people who just kept turning away from the Most High, just being disobedient, and that's why they're in their situation. And I talked to some of my other church members or friends, and they told me to be careful because there were these Hebrew Israelites that would take me away from the Most High. They would tell you to go back into bondage, basically by following the commandments. And so, but I was still open because in serving in the church every week and listening to the same sermon regurgitated week after week, and the focus being on giving my tithes and my offering and not really learning about the Most High and about my relationship, I felt empty on a daily basis. I felt like I wasn't being filled up and that my relationship wasn't what it needed to be. And so I talked to my husband about that, and so that led us into the Bible study that my brother invited us to. It was called Black History from a Biblical Perspective. And I'll let my husband take it from here.
Yep. And so just that Bible study, we've talked about Black history, why are Black people in the condition that they're in all over the world, and, starting in the Bible and then looking at other texts and just world events and history. And it seems like, Black folks are just at the bottom everywhere you go, where you look. And it doesn't matter the country, they're being oppressed some kind of way. And just coming into, according to Deuteronomy 28, and aligning those prophecies with who modern day descendants of Israel are, coming to the realization that we fit a lot of those like no other people on the earth. And saying, okay, so I'm a preacher's kid. I was raised in church reading the Bible, and this whole time I've been reading it but not being able to understand and really perceive that I'm reading about myself, my family, my forefathers. And an interesting thing is, before we had the Bible study with the brother, I was in a coffee shop talking to a stranger, and he asked me if I was ready to hear the truth, or do you want the truth? And I said, yes, I do. He said, well, even if it turned everything that you knew, your whole world upside down, would you still want the truth? Yeah, I do. I want the truth. And some of the questions that I had after that Bible study, going to my pastor at the time, was not sufficient answers. It wasn't coming from the Bible. And that congregation was actually the Evangelical Covenant Church. The philosophy is where is it written. So if you have a statement of faith, you got to take me to the scriptures and show me where is it written. And when I was asking questions about, traditions, why do we have Christmas trees in the church? In Jeremiah, some of these things. And why do we do this and why do we do that? What's the relationship, with our faith? How does that, come together? And I'll never forget the question he asked me. This was kind of like the straw that broke the camel's back. He was like, well, if you go to a particular hill and you have an umbrella on that particular hill and you didn't know, but that was actually a pagan practice to a particular deity or whatever, but you had no knowledge of that, would you be wrong if you held that umbrella on that hill? And I'm like, yeah, even if you're ignorant about it, if that was a practice and that's what you did on that particular thing, that's wrong, And just, I was kind of like, if that's your reasoning, and, I'm not trying to appeal to everyone, I'm trying to get the truth. And for me and my family, what's important for us is to serve the Most High the way He prescribed to be worshipped and served. And it all comes down to obedience. That's the one thing I know for sure. People say, hey, have you ever heard the Most High speak? Well, without a doubt, the one time I've heard Him speak was when I was answering the call to get closer to Him, and He said obedience. And I see that as a clear theme throughout the entire Bible, from Torah all the way through. So He wants obedience, and you either have a heart to obey and conform to His standard, or you don't, and you rebel. So, it's a process. We're still trying to understand what does it mean to us living in this time. How do we make sense of it all? But it's obedience at the end of the day, and that's for me and my household. We're going to serve the Most High.
Yes.
You girls have anything to add? Do you remember going to church?
Well,
Anything different?
I remember at our church named Citadel, we would get these little buckets with books and not listen to the service. And right now, since we're listening to the service now, I don't think that was right, because when I didn't really know, but when our parents ask us a question when we get older, we won't know because we were just reading these books. And when we stopped going to church, we started not eating certain types of food. I didn't know why, and we stopped doing certain holidays, and I didn't know why.
Do you know why? No?
Yes.
And how do you feel about that now?
That I'm going in the right direction.
You miss pork chops?
Yes.
You do?
No. Wait,
Okay.
No.
No. How about you, Kendall? What do you remember from?
I remember that sometimes when we would go and leave the service, sometimes I would wonder why we couldn't just sit there and listen, and learn with everyone else. But I kind of never spoke up about it, and I just did what I was told.
Why you had to be in a separate, children's service?
Yeah.
Mm. And now, do you feel like you know more about why we do certain things, why we celebrate certain holidays, and why we don't others?
Yeah.
Or why we eat certain things?
You miss it? You miss any of the holidays? You miss any of the foods?
No, not really.
So how has your walk affected your relationship with your friends?
It's been different. I mean, because when I did celebrate the things that they did, I guess it was easier to talk to them. But now sometimes I guess it's just harder because they're always talking about other stuff.
And how do you feel about that?
Sometimes it gets annoying.
Have you made new friends that believe the way that you do?
No.
Not one?
Actually, yes.
So that is one thing. Even with us and our family, we, after learning about the truth, we would share it with, our parents growing up in church. Robert's dad being a pastor, my father being a pastor. Like, we had a long line of being in church, church of God and Christ, right? And so presenting this, for one, to my dad, he asked me why we weren't celebrating Christmas anymore. And I told him, because, the Most High doesn't want us to. It says right here in Jeremiah not to celebrate Christmas. And he's like, why would, the Father not want you to celebrate his birthday? And it was like, and he said, we don't have to have this conversation anymore. And so it's like one of those things where you have to pull back sometimes from people who are very close to you. And sometimes it's a timing issue and they will possibly come around. And then other times you unfortunately can't spend as much time with them. And, because you don't celebrate and believe the same way. And it could be a lonely thing because some family members you saw on Christmas and Easter and Thanksgiving, and now you don't do that, and they wonder why you do certain things. Like, you mean Thanksgiving, you're just having dinner, it's just this, and they don't see it as an abomination to the Most High. Like, they say that you eat funny ways, or you're very particular. Why do you have to be so picky a certain way? And you just want to please the Father, and they don't understand. But having a community and having coming into the truth and the knowledge and the understanding that there are other people like you, there are other Hebrews out here who are going on the same path and the same walk, and so you don't have to be alone, and you don't have to be lonely. Your family may change, but you still have a family. So, and I'm just thankful and happy that my husband and my daughters and my son are young in this walk, and they can have the understanding at an early age and not have to go through some of the difficulties that we went through in trying to figure out the way. So, hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah. Michaela, you have anything you want to say before we sign off?
How do you feel about Sabbath?
It's okay.
All right. You want to shalom us out?
Like I'm tired.
Shalom.
Ta-da.